The National Security Agency ignited a firestorm of controversy with widespread surveillance and eavesdropping on United States citizens. Edward Snowden has stated that no phone call is made in America without being noted by the federal government. And documents reveal the NSA even spied on the Pope. Revelations of spying on world leaders and foreign nationals may change Washington, and Congress is now considering a bill that would require Senate confirmation of any future head of the spy agency. The Obama administration said any check on its power in this matter could harm national security. Even California Senator Dianne Feinstein is in favor of the confirmation process. Feinstein is normally an avid supporter of the spy agency, and President Obama may name a civilian to head the NSA under intense public pressure to reform the agency. Polls show that the American people are largely opposed to the surveillance program initiated by the National Security Agency. And Wade Madsen, he's an investigative journalist. He's been researching the NSA for several years, and he's the author of National Security Agency Surveillance, Reflections and Revelation. Madsen was also a contractor for the National Security Agency. He's our guest on the show today. We're going to be talking about the NSA, domestic and international spying, and the agency itself. Welcome to the show, Wayne.
Good to be with you.
Now, Wayne, the National Security Agency, it's all over the headlines. Edward Snowden, his name is splashed everywhere. How has the nature of the National Security Agency changed since its earliest inception?
Well, when I was with the NSA in the mid-'80s, both as a contractor and as a U.S. naval officer assigned there, it was still operating largely under the restrictions imposed by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978. Now, this was the act that set up the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to handle any NSA interceptions or collection of intelligence on U.S. citizens. And this came largely about due to the abuses carried out by the NSA during the Johnson and Nixon administrations, whereby the NSA was used to target civil rights leaders, civil rights workers, and the peace movement. And we had governing instructions. One of the major ones was United States Signals Intelligence Directive 18, which was considered the Bible for handling intercepts of U.S. persons. And that included not only U.S. citizens, but holders of green cards, resident in the United States, even U.S. corporations, even airlines fly, with the American registered with the American flag or U.S. flagged vessels. They all were considered U.S. persons. After 9/11, U.S. SID 18 was no longer the Bible. The new Bible were a bunch of secret directives issued by the White House, the Bush-Cheney administration, all of which were carried over and were implemented and authorized under the Obama administration. So there essentially is no outside oversight of the NSA any longer. And that's the biggest change that I've seen over the last 13 years or so.
Now, when you were working at the NSA, how was the data collected then and now, and the differences?
Well, circa 1980s, most of the information was still transmitted in the radio frequency spectrum through the telephone calls via microwave, via satellite, even the use of walkie-talkies, radio telephones. People still sent telegrams and telexes back in those days. So a lot of what NSA picked up was from the radio frequency spectrum.
So they would have to listen to the radio waves to hear the information, collect the information.
Right, and they had a series of NSA intercept stations around the world, strategically located to pick up that intelligence. But since the advent of the internet and the World Wide Web, communications went digital. It's no longer broadcast solely in the radio frequency spectrum. It's
so in the early days, they simply had to listen to the radio frequencies, and did they actually have to tap into hardline telephone connections back then?
Yes, they did that too. They did that. They would tap directly into the communications cables, and there were a lot of revelations in the media then about that. With the advent of digital communications and fiber optics, they had to get a lot smarter, and now they've embedded themselves totally within the internet infrastructure. As we know with the latest revelations, they call these man-in-the-middle operations, where they masquerade as LinkedIn sites to gather the kind of curriculum vitae, resume information to target customer service engineers, certified software engineers, so that they target these people either through blackmail or making cash offers to get people inside to place NSA surveillance bugs, basically, within routers and internet service provider facilities. This is what's done largely overseas. In this country, we've seen a lot of willing cooperation by IT companies, Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, Yahoo, and others that have allowed NSA to directly penetrate their server operations.
Now, a lot of these public corporations, such as Facebook or Google, they claim that they're simply abiding by the law or the request for the government to hand over information. Is that not the case? Are they simply just allowing a backdoor pipe to go directly to the NSA?
Yeah, they're doing exactly what companies that claim they were abiding by the law did back in the old days, when Western Union, RCA, and ITT provided copies of telegrams to NSA. The NSA couriers would go to New York, for example, and grab all the overseas telegrams, many of which were sent by U.S. citizens overseas, and what they received back from overseas were provided to NSA for analysis. So corporations are more in tune with the desires of NSA, and always have been, than they are their own customers, because corporations are basically creatures of the U.S. military intelligence infrastructure.
Now, you're in Washington, D.C., and we know that Edward Snowden's document releases to Glenn Greenwald have only scratched the surface. What have you heard on the ground in the rumblings in Washington about any future revelations that could come about in reports from Greenwald and Snowden?
Well, it's problematic. The individuals, the media operations that received, we were told originally 50,000 pages of classified documents. Now, I don't know if that was an exaggeration. I doubt that Snowden would have exaggerated that. I can believe the media would have, because especially media like the Washington Post, New York Times, and the Guardian even are after subscribers. So they're going to keep everyone waiting with bated breath for the next, Snowden documents. And looking at the recent revelations, a couple things bother me. Number one, the redactions. The press itself has redacted information from some of these PowerPoint slides and other documents, mostly names of individuals. But the fact that somebody works at the NSA, that should be, in my estimation, that should be no more of a secret than some of the ways they're utilizing to tap into and listen to private communications. And then the other thing that bothers me is if the media is redacting bits of information, what other lengths are they going to redact? Maybe they in fact have 50,000 pages and they have no intention of releasing the bulk of that information. We know that in some cases we see PowerPoint slideshows being revealed, but a number of pages are missing. A majority of the pages are missing. What editor or publisher is going to take it on himself, unless they're under an amazing amount of pressure from NSA to decide what the readers should read and what they shouldn't read? So even ProPublica, which advances itself as they're in, they conduct investigations in the public interest. Even they have been caught redacting and withholding information. No one can be trusted here. The information should have been released in bulk. If there were 50,000 pages of documents, 50,000 pages of documents should have been released. I don't want the editors at the New York Times and the Washington Post to make the determination of what I'm going to read about the NSA.
So what do you think the political fallout is from all these revelations of spying? You
mentioned one in the lead up. There's this a bill to amend have an amendment in the Intelligence Authorization Bill to require the Senate to approve the director of NSA. A couple things bother me about that, because NSA's director has always been a military position, usually somebody that's it's either Air Force, Navy, or Army. I don't think there's ever been a Marine Corps director of the NSA, but I may be mistaken there. I don't believe there has been. But this is a normal military tour of duty, except with the last two NSA directors, General Michael Hayden of the Air Force and General Keith Alexander, the present director from the Army. These have been extremely long military tours of duty. Hayden and Alexander served longer in the position of NSA director than any of their predecessors since the NSA was created in 1952. And what bothers me, if the Senate approves the director of NSA, is this going to turn into a 10-year appointment like the current FBI director is? And I think that could be a very dangerous thing. I think the NSA director should not last at NSA any longer than a normal military tour, which at the maximum is usually 4 years, but normally 3 years. But it should be no longer than 4 years.
So are you concerned that this position could turn into a long-term bureaucratic position within the military-industrial complex?
Absolutely. We could wind up with another 10-year FBI director. I think Mueller was even extended beyond that. So the director of national intelligence, although we haven't seen any person in that role for 10 years, it could easily turn into one.
Let me ask you this. How does that affect the checks and balances of the agency if we have someone there who's there for 10 years that clearly could span 2 terms of one president?
It's a major problem, because then you've got somebody there so long they know where all the skeletons are buried, and we know what happens when you get these long-term intelligence or law enforcement directors. You get a J. Edgar Hoover situation where they're in a position to blackmail even the president of the United States. So I think it should be kept to what needs to be done instead of turning this into a potential 10-year Senate-approved appointment. They should keep it as a military officer, but there needs to be more outside jurisdictional control over NSA. And the one way we can start is the Senate and the House need to clean their own house, so to speak. They need to clean their own houses up first, and that is to get rid of Dianne Feinstein as the Senate Intelligence Committee chair. She is totally in lockstep with any surveillance system that comes down the pike, and her counterpart, Representative Mike Rogers, Republican of Michigan, who's a former FBI agent. We don't need former FBI agents doing oversight of the NSA. It would make more sense, and I don't think you're going to get any Republican to exercise good oversight, with the possible exception of one of the key authors of the Patriot Act, Representative James Sensenbrenner, former House Judiciary Chair, now is sponsoring legislation to limit what NSA can do. Perhaps he should replace Rogers in as long as the Republicans have the House. But in an ideal situation where we could have legitimate oversight, perhaps somebody like Representative Rush Holt of New Jersey, who is a big critic of the intelligence community, should be the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. As far as Feinstein, anybody but her. She's a total a joke as far as I'm concerned, as far as providing any kind of oversight over NSA. She only broke with NSA when she found out that the NSA was monitoring foreign leaders. These are some of her elitist friends, of course, that she's always meeting. She has no problem with NSA monitoring American citizens, but when she found out it was monitoring people like Chancellor Merkel and French President Hollande and Prime Minister Netanyahu. She got very upset about that.
Now, Wayne, we're coming up on a break, and when we come back, I want to talk to you more about your position at the NSA, some of the secrets you were forced to keep, and the levels of secrecy that the NSA has in place, and what drives whistleblowers to speak out like yourself as you are now. So, Wayne, we got to take a break. We'll be right back with Wayne Madsen, special investigator, right here on WHDT World News.